Smoak at 365 Sports, and here's how the day started. Clemson has joined the lawsuit business as they are now going to, well, they're filing a lawsuit against the ACC. This is the second school that has done so. Florida State has been very much, I guess, the more aggressive of that, saying, hey, let's go get it. Filing today in Pickens County, South Carolina, the second lawsuit the ACC faces as Florida State and ACC currently have dueling lawsuits. On top of that, it's Nicole Arbach. It's a legal thing. It's a legal filing. Clemson argues the ACC's actions interfere with their free exercise of its rights and are fatally detrimental to Clemson's efforts to ensure its athletic programs can continue to compete at the highest level. And finally, Ross Dellinger puts it into bullet points. ACC does not own the broadcasting rights to its games after it leaves the league. This is according to Clemson. It is not required to pay the exit fees, according to Clemson. It owes no further or no other fiduciary duties to the conference. Fiduciary, according to Ross Dellinger. The ACC is also fired back with a statement, of course, with what they think of all of this about what's happening, that from Commissioner Jim Phillips.
Well, of course, they said they agreed to this and they agreed to it. Like, look, you can – I know that we haven't done it since the 70s, but you can amend the Constitution, and, you know, we really need to in a lot of regards. But there are a lot of things you can change. You can fight to change things. And I don't think anybody should be surprised to see Clemson enter the breach now, because they found out last week that there's no way they're going to make up that money. And they knew that anyway, but I think for their board to move forward, they needed Florida State to go out there first, take some of those bullets, and then they needed to be like, okay, well, you know how it's going to be. Do you guys want us to be kind of in the middle of the pack in football revenue-wise? They're like, no, that's all we care about in life. So there they go, out into it. And one of the things the ACC has working against it when it comes to this trial and the contract they agreed to is every other conference in the country, their TV deals are going to be up before the ACC's. So if Clemson and Florida State go into new leagues, even if they take partial shares, they'll be able to raise their money before then if they get out. And so there's really no, other than they agreed to this in 2013 and 2016, that's what they have to stand on, which I know is tough. But this is just more negotiating on the part of Clemson and Florida State, of which we'll eventually see a settlement down the line somewhere.
Yeah, they agreed to it. I mean, that's the thing. And so that's the fight now the ACC has on its hands. Well, y'all agreed to this, and they obviously feel like we agreed to this, but it's not exactly what it was portrayed to be initially, is the argument. And so now, yeah, they're at a spot where it's either stick it out and start making less and less money than the teams they feel they're on par with, or you know, you find your way to get on the big cruise ship with the ACC or with the SEC or the Big Ten and go float off into the night with all your riches and compete with those teams you feel you should be competing with. So, yeah, I mean, either way, it's a very important conclusion and important story and important outcome that we're going to see here, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I don't think anybody, to Paul's point, wants this dragged out in the courts for years. I mean, Florida State has a sense of urgency. Clemson has a sense of urgency. The ACC, not so much. They can kind of long play this and drag this out as best they can. They don't need to feel like they're in a rush, but I think there's got to be a sense of urgency for them as well, of like, hey, you better win this or else the whole house of cards comes crumbling down. And next thing you know, you're the one getting poached, not just losing prominent members, but probably cratering entirely. So, yeah, I mean, this was to be expected at some point that we'd have another chapter in this back and forth with the ACC and the schools looking to depart. So now, yeah, Florida State's got a friend by their side who's looking for the same thing that they are, and we'll see if there's another school or two that will join the fight as well at some point. But I think, like, this will eventually get settled, like Paul seems to think, and I guess a lot of people seem to think that we're not going to watch this get dragged out and out and out. There's too much at stake for that to really be the case. But, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, here we are, and it's anybody's best guess as to what the courts eventually rule or how the settlement comes about. But this was not entirely unexpected, and so a big next move in the whole ongoing saga.
I did record the Jay Bilas segment earlier today, and I did ask him about college basketball's growth or some of the, I guess, future opportunities or options or what we hear. Greg Sankey, the Clemson lawsuit. Ross Dellinger just put this out. Clemson contends the ACC's exit fee of $140 million is absurdly high compared to other conferences, and goes on to list the other exit fees. The Big Ten, $0. The Big 12, an amount equal in revenues distributed to departing members for the final 2 years of its membership. Remember, that's about $80 million or so, depending on what Texas and Oklahoma, I think, both ended up doing $100 million. And the SEC, $30 million if 2 years notice, $40 million if less than 2 years provided, and then $45 million if no notice is provided. I'd never seen what the SEC or the Big Ten lower than I thought, and so Clemson going on to say that also today. And so here we go. 2 now. Florida State was kind of on an island. Now they're on the same island with Clemson.
Yeah, and that'll rage the debates of, or the debates will rage over where the landing spots are and all of that. But there's still a little bit of a ways to go before we get to that point. I mean, there's this to deal with, and then yeah, I mean, let the speculation begin as to what the finals of this saga would look like. What that means as far as where members are and everything. But I'd say I'm not a contractual guy by any means, but the difference is you've got a lot of years left on your contract. That's the reason why the number's so high, is because you've got like a decade left on that bad boy. Texas and Oklahoma had, what, a year or 2 at most that they were getting out early from?
I think it was probably when 21, it would have been 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not talking like 10 years still left on the deal. So that's part of the reason as to why I would imagine that number is so high. Ross also mentioned that Clemson made it very clear that they're not giving notice, because we know what a big to-do that was with the Pac-12, and so they were very careful to make sure, like, hey, we're not leaving. We're not saying that we're leaving. We're not giving notice. But we would like to know, as he pointed out, of if we did, will we be able to broadcast our own games? That's a big point that Clemson is trying to figure out here. And so, yeah, this is the battles. This is the next battle in the long realignment war. That's our modern realignment war. I guess you could really pinpoint any start you wanted to, but I look at Texas, Oklahoma as like this version of when that ball really started getting rolling. I know you can go back to A&M leaving for the SEC or Missouri or whoever, but it does seem like Texas, Oklahoma for this round was a real starting point. And so now it's the ACC's turn. They just added schools last summer. We know that didn't sit well, and we know how this is all played out. So, yeah, may the best league or best side win, I guess.
So today, ESPN and college football's playoff.